Okay, let's dive right in. We're starting today with a piece of sound. It's pretty scratchy, filtered through a really violent storm, but it captures the absolute final moments of a giant ship. Let's listen.
So that first voice, that's Captain Cooper of the Arthur M. Anderson. He's checking in on the ship sailing nearby, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yeah, and the second voice, you hear how calm he sounds, despite everything. That's Captain Ernest McSorley of the Fitzgerald.
And his reply is just unforgettable, isn't it? We're holding our own.
Exactly. We are holding our own. Delivered just after 7:10 p.m. And, those were the last words anyone ever heard from the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Just minutes later, poof, the radar blip for this enormous ship, 729 feet long, 13,000 tons of steel. It just vanished.
Gone. A ship bigger than 2 football fields, just gone from the screen.
And that brings us right to the heart of this mystery, the thing that's gripped people for, nearly 50 years now? The silence.
The terrifying silence, yeah. No SOS, no Mayday call, not even a garbled transmission, nothing. Yeah. How does a ship that massive, with 29 experienced sailors on board, just disappear without a single word?
That lack of a distress call, it's the crucial piece of the puzzle, really. It tells us whatever happened wasn't gradual. It wasn't a slow sinking where they had time to react.
It had to be sudden, catastrophic.
Instantaneous, violent, total, and incredibly fast. So our mission today, for you listening, is to walk through what we know happened in those final hours.
We'll look at the damage the ship took on and then really dig into the main theories that try to explain this impossible event.
Right. We've got the official story, we've got what the sailors believed, and then there's the really dramatic one involving rogue waves.
It's not just about the sinking, is it? It's about the fight these men put up against nature at its absolute fiercest, and how professionals face the end.
Absolutely. And to really get the scale of this loss, you first need to understand who the SS Edmund Fitzgerald was. She wasn't just some freighter. She was basically a celebrity on the Great Lakes.
A real star. She had all those nicknames, right? Mighty Fitz, Pride of the American Side.
And sadly, the Titanic of the Great Lakes. For 13 years after she was launched back in '58, she was the biggest thing on the lakes, period. The Queen.
729 feet. That's massive, especially for an inland freighter. You think about modern ocean supertankers, some aren't that much bigger. And this thing was designed for freshwater lakes.
It gave her this aura, like she was unsinkable. Her job was pretty straightforward, though, hauling iron ore, specifically taconite pellets.
Taconite. Remind us what that is again.
It's a low-grade iron ore. They crush it, process it, and turn it into these little marble-sized pellets. Makes it easier to transport and use in the steel mills.
And she was carrying a lot of it on that last trip.
Oh, yeah. 26,116 long tons. That's a heavy cargo, dense stuff.
And people actually, came out to see her.
Totally. The sources say crowds would gather at the Sioux Locks, that critical channel between Lake Superior and Lake Huron, just to watch the Fitzgerald pass through. She was that famous.
Wow, like watching royalty go by?
Kind of, yeah. And apparently, some of the captains would even play music over the ship's intercom for the crowds. A bit of a showman, the DJ captain, as some call him.
That's great. But she was still a workhorse, right? Built tough?
Absolutely. Built of rugged steel for the brutal lake weather. But interestingly, the interiors were apparently quite plush for a freighter. Added to that whole Queen of the Fleet image. ###P. The seasoned crew.
Okay, so you've got this legendary ship. What about the people on board?
A top-notch crew. 29 men. And these weren't rookies, not at all. They were seasoned guys, veterans of the Great Lakes. Most came from those small towns in Ohio, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Places where working the lakes is just in the blood.
Experienced sailors who knew what they were doing.
Exactly. That's part of what makes the whole thing so baffling. They knew the lakes, they knew the storms, they had procedures, they were prepared for rough seas. Just not for this.
And the captain, Ernest McSorley.
Captain McSorley. 63 years old, 40-plus years on the lakes. Known as a quiet guy, very competent, deeply respected, a real master mariner.
His calmness on that final radio call makes more sense then. He wasn't easily rattled.
Not at all. He was a pro facing a situation he understood, even if it was extreme.
And there's a really poignant detail about this particular trip, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. This run, hauling taconite down towards Detroit. It was supposed to be his last one, his final voyage before retiring.
Oh, wow. After 40 years, he was just heading home for good.
Supposed to be a routine trip to cap off a long career. Instead,
they sailed right into something called the Witch of November. That name alone tells you something.
It really does. It's not just any storm. It's a specific, particularly nasty weather phenomenon on the Great Lakes in late autumn.
So what makes it so dangerous? What is a witch of November?
Well, think of it like this. You've got Lake Superior, this huge body of water, still holding on to some warmth from the summer, even in early November.
Okay, so the water's relatively warm.
Right. So you get warm, moist air rising off the lake. Then it collides with this super cold, dry Arctic air plunging down from Canada. And often there's also warm, moist air coming up from the Gulf of Mexico feeding into it.
A three-way atmospheric collision.
Precisely. And when those massive contrasting air masses clash over the open lake, it brews up these incredibly intense low-pressure systems. They call them weather bombs sometimes because they deepen so fast. Basically a freshwater hurricane.
Generating crazy winds and waves.
Exactly. Hurricane-force winds, sustained, and really high, unpredictable waves. Nasty stuff.
And the trip started normally.
Yeah. November 9th, out of Superior, Wisconsin, loaded up the taconite. She was traveling in tandem with another ship, the Arthur M. Anderson. Remember, Captain Cooper? That was his ship.
Right, the one he radioed from.
So they were sailing together. But the forecast, that was the big problem.
I underestimated it.
Massively. The National Weather Service initially called it a typical November storm. But this thing just exploded in intensity. It went from typical gale to one of the worst storms in decades, like way faster than predicted.
Which means McSorley and Cooper were making decisions based on outdated information.
Exactly. They were reacting to a storm that was already much worse than the forecasts were telling them. A really dangerous situation.
Okay, so the storm ramps up way beyond forecasts. What did the captains do?
Well, by 2:27 a.m. on November 10th, the warnings were upgraded. Gale warnings became storm warnings. McSorley and Cooper, being the experienced guys they were, knew the standard shipping route was basically a death trap now.
To expose.
Way to expose. So they make a tactical decision. They decide to abandon the usual shorter route.
And head where?
They take a longer route, further north, hugging the Canadian coastline.
Why there? What was the thinking?
It was a calculated gamble. They hoped the higher land along the coast, the cliffs and terrain, would act as a kind of shield.
Break up the waves a bit? Offer some protection from the wind?
That was the plan. Try to use the landmass to buffer the worst of it and make a run for the relative safety of Whitefish Bay.
But the storm just wouldn't let them go.
No. By the afternoon of the 10th, they were right in the thick of it. Hurricane-force winds were talking over 70 knots, maybe gusts even higher, and the waves, consistently 25 feet, probably bigger ones mixed in.
25-foot waves hitting a 700-foot ship. The stress must have been unbelievable.
Unimaginable. And it's around this time that the Fitzgerald starts showing signs that something is seriously wrong. The fight shifts from just navigating the storm to, well, to basic survival. #BSV. This ship is mortally wounded.
Things really escalate around mid-afternoon, right? 3:30 p.m.
Yeah, that's when McSorley radios the Anderson with the first real damage report. And again, listen to how calm he sounds, but think about what he's actually saying.
What did he report?
He said, I have a fence rail down, 2 vents lost or damaged, and a list. I'm checking down.
Okay, let's break that down. Fence rail down, maybe not critical, but a list. That means the ship is tilting, right? Taking on water.
Exactly. A list means uneven flooding. Water's getting in somewhere, maybe the ballast tanks, maybe the cargo hold itself, and it's not balanced.
And with that heavy taconite cargo, any water getting in would make that list worse, wouldn't it? Sloshing around.
Absolutely. Taconite's heavy but stable dry. Wet, it's a different story, and the water itself adds immense weight. But the really terrifying part of that report, 2 vents lost or damaged.
Vents on the deck, what do they do?
They're crucial. The Fitzgerald had, I think, 24 of them across the main deck. They let air in and out of the cargo holds, equalize pressure, but they have to be completely watertight. If those covers are gone or the structure around them is damaged...
It's like leaving a window open on a submarine.
Pretty much, yeah. When those huge 25-foot waves wash over the deck, what sailors call green water, it's now got a direct pipe right down into the ship's guts.
Pouring gallons and gallons of water inside with every wave.
Tons of water. The force would be incredible. And it drastically reduces the ship's freeboard.
Freeboard, that's the distance between the water line and the main deck.
Right. The Fitzgerald was already riding low because of the taconite. Taking on water through those vents makes her sink lower and lower, makes her even more vulnerable to the next wave burying the deck. It's a deadly cycle.
So Cooper, on the Anderson, he hears this report. He must have known immediately how bad that was.
Oh, definitely. As an experienced captain, losing vents and having a list in that kind of storm, he knew it was serious. So he radios back right away with the critical question.
Do you have your pumps going?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And McSorley's answer tells you everything. Yes, both of them.
Both pumps. Not just one, but the full capacity.
Right. He wasn't just dealing with a minor leak. He was already using everything he had just to try and keep up with the water pouring in. It tells us the damage was significant, way more than his calm tone suggested. He was in serious trouble hours before the end.
And then he makes that request. Will you stay by me till I get to Whitefish?
Yeah. That's a moment you hear the professionalism crack just a tiny bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just asking for company. It's a plea.
Yeah.
He knows his ship is badly hurt, and he needs the Anderson close. Needs the help, needs the guidance. #, the blind giant.
As if things weren't bad enough, damaged vents, taking on water, pumps maxed out.
Right. What else could go wrong?
Yeah.
Well, shortly after that, the Fitzgerald lost her eyes. McSorley reported both radars were out.
Oh, man. In that storm, at night, with those waves and maybe snow squalls, losing radar is...
Catastrophic. It's your only way to see. Your only way to navigate safely, avoid shoals, find the entrance to Whitefish Bay. Without it, you are completely blind.
The source material had a really good analogy for this.
Yeah, it did. Imagine driving a big loaded bus down a winding mountain road in the dark in a total whiteout blizzard.
Okay.
Now imagine your headlights go out, your windshield wipers stop, your GPS dies. You have no idea where you are or what's in front of you. And the only way you can possibly navigate is by relying on someone else, maybe driving 10 miles behind you, trying to tell you over the radio, okay, turn left now ease to the right.
That's what the Fitzgerald became, a 729-foot blind giant.
Completely reliant on the Anderson 10 miles back, trying to guide her through the darkness and the storm towards safety. The crew on the Fitzgerald, they couldn't see a thing through the spray and the snow.
And the pressure on Captain Cooper on the Anderson, immense. Trying to save his own ship while basically being the eyes for another crippled vessel.
Incredible pressure. Trying to keep track of her, give directions, all while battling those same monster waves and winds themselves. Just an impossible situation.
So the Fitzgerald is crippled, blind, fighting for her life, trying to follow the Anderson, and the storm is still raging at its absolute peak.
Yeah, and this is where we get to the event that many believe delivered the final blow, around 6:05 p.m., so just about 15 minutes before that last holding our own message.
What happened on the Anderson?
Captain Cooper reported something really violent. First, he said they felt this distinct, sudden bump, like they'd hit something underwater, but they hadn't.
Weird. Like a shock wave?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But immediately after that bump, this monster wave just erupted out of nowhere. Cooper's watching from the pilot house, which is way up, like 35 feet above the waterline.
35 feet.
Yeah. And he sees this solid wall of green water come completely over the Anderson's deck and smash against the pilot house windows. Washed the entire deck.
Unbelievable. A wave that high, the force must have been incredible.
Staggering. And before they could even recover, bam. A second wave, just like the first one, hit him again.
2 in a row.
2 massive waves, one right after the other. They hit so hard, Cooper said they actually smashed one of the Anderson's own lifeboats right off its davits, tore it loose.
Wow. And this sequence, this pattern of waves, it has a name on the Great Lakes, doesn't it?
It does. Sailors call it the Three Sisters. It's a known phenomenon, though thankfully rare. It's not just big waves, it's rogue waves.
Rogue waves much bigger than the waves around them.
Exactly. Usually 3 huge successive waves that are way out of proportion to the general sea state. They think it's caused by constructive interference waves, combining their energy maybe amplified by wind, currents, and the shape of the lake bottom in certain areas. Lethal.
And Cooper saw these waves.
He survived the first 2, and then he saw the third one building. And in his testimony later, he was very clear. He said, essentially, I watched those 2 waves head down the lake towards the Fitzgerald. And I think those were the 2 that sent her under.
He believed those waves were the killers. #B, the Vanishing Act.
So just picture it. Those 2, maybe 3 monster waves are rolling across the lake.
Heading straight for a ship that's already damaged, already listing, riding low, blind.
It's the worst possible scenario. Which brings us right back to that final check-in at 7:10 p.m. The Anderson's first mate calls the Fitzgerald just a routine call, warning about another ship nearby.
And that's when McSorley says, we are holding our own.
Yeah. The last testament to their professionalism, or maybe just their grit. On the Anderson's radar, the Fitzgerald's blip had been flickering in and out because of the heavy snow. Cooper figured it would pop back up once the squall passed.
But it didn't.
It never reappeared. Just gone.
So they try to call again?
Yep. Around 7:22 p.m., about 12 minutes after the last message, the Anderson's crew radios the Fitzgerald. Nothing. Cooper tries again. Just static.
12 minutes. From holding our own to complete utter silence.
That's the window. That's when it happened. And the silence, again, it's the key. A ship that size, 29 men, to vanish instantly.
No time for a distress call. No time to launch a lifeboat. No time for anything.
It confirms it was violent, total, and unbelievably fast. Over in seconds. It wasn't just sinking. It sounds like a complete structural failure, an implosion almost.
So the Anderson makes it to the relative safety of Whitefish Bay. They must have been utterly exhausted, probably traumatized.
Absolutely, they'd just been through hell. And then they get this request from the Coast Guard.
Asking them to do what?
To turn around. To go back out into that hurricane and search for the Fitzgerald. Search for survivors.
Oh my God. After what they'd just endured, to go back out there.
Incredible bravery required. The source material notes Cooper's response. He agreed, but you can hear the reality of it in his words. He said something like, "I'll give it a try, but that's all I can do." He knew the risk.
So they went back out. What did they find?
Heartbreak, mostly. Debris. Some life jackets, pieces of life rafts. They found 2 of the Fitzgerald's lifeboats.
Intact.
No, not at all. They were completely smashed up, twisted metal. But the crucial thing was, there was zero sign that anyone had ever launched them or been in them. More proof of how fast it all happened.
And the crew? Any sign of the 29 men?
None. Not one body was ever recovered. They went down with their ship.
And the wreck itself? When did they find it?
Took about 4 days. A U.S. Navy plane using specialized equipment, a magnetic anomaly detector, finally located the wreckage.
Where was it? How deep?
About 530 feet down. Really deep, cold water. And it was just inside Canadian waters, near that area McSorley was trying to reach.
And the condition of the wreck told a story too, didn't it?
A brutal one. The Fitzgerald was in 2 main pieces, snapped clean in half. The bow section and the stern section were lying relatively close, but separated, oriented differently, like a giant steel branch just broken over someone's knee.
Proof of catastrophic failure, but not why it failed.
Exactly. The wreck showed the result, the sheer violence, but it didn't definitively answer the question. What started the chain reaction? What caused the failure? #B. Analyzing the why 3 theories.
And that why question led to a lot of investigation and ultimately a lot of disagreement, right? Different theories emerged.
Oh yeah, a major split actually between the official findings and what many people in the maritime world, especially sailors and the families, believed. We basically end up with 3 main schools of thought.
Okay, let's start with the official version. Theory 1, the hatch failure theory.
Right. This was the conclusion from the U.S. Coast Guard's Marine Board of Investigation, and later supported by the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board.
And their argument focused on the hatches, like those vents McSorley mentioned?
Well, specifically the large cargo hatch covers on the deck. There were 21 of these massive steel covers, each held down by, I think, 68 heavy steel clamps. The official theory essentially blamed the crew indirectly.
How so?
They argued that these hatch covers weren't properly secured before entering the storm, or that the rubber seals around them were faulty, maybe poorly maintained.
So the idea is that water was getting in through leaky hatches.
Exactly. That those huge waves washing over the deck were forcing water past faulty seals or improperly clamped covers, leading to a slow, gradual flooding of the main cargo hold over several hours.
And eventually enough water gets in.
Enough water gets in, the ship loses buoyancy, especially with that dense taconite, becomes unstable, and then basically nosedives, breaking apart either on the way down or on impact with the bottom.
But this theory wasn't popular with everyone.
Not at all. It caused a huge uproar. Sailors, the Lake Carriers Association, and especially the families of the crew, felt it unfairly blamed the victims. They insisted McSorley and his crew were too professional to have sailed into that storm with improperly secured hatches. They felt it was maybe a convenient explanation that overlooked potential design flaws or other factors.
Okay, so that leads to the second theory, the one favored by many mariners. Theory 2, the shoaling theory.
Right, the sailor's story. This one leans heavily on Captain Cooper's testimony and the known sequence of events reported by McSorley before the sinking.
What's the core argument here?
Remember Cooper saying the Fitzgerald passed far too close to the 6 Fathom Shoal near Caribou Island earlier that day?
Yeah, the shallow, rocky area, 6 fathoms, that's only 36 feet deep.
Exactly. And the Fitzgerald, loaded down with 26,000 tons of taconite, was likely drawing maybe 27, 28 feet of water, maybe more. The margin for error was tiny.
So the theory is she hit the bottom, scraped the rocks.
That's the idea. That even a slight dip in water level, or being lifted and dropped by a large wave in that shallow area, caused the ship's hull, her her belly, to scrape hard against those underwater rocks, tearing a significant gash, maybe a long one, along the bottom plates.
Which would explain...
It would potentially explain everything McSorley reported later, the immediate list from taking on water unevenly through a hull breach. And crucially, why both bilge pumps were running full blast hours before the final plunge.
Because they were pumping against a major leak from the bottom.
Precisely. In this scenario, the ship was fatally wounded early on, maybe around midday or early afternoon. She was slowly bleeding out, taking on water continuously, losing stability, losing freeboard, long before the worst part of the storm hit her later that evening.
So under this theory, we are holding our own means something different. It means McSorley knew he was sinking slowly and was just trying desperately to make it to shelter.
It paints a much grimmer picture of those final hours, yeah. Fighting a losing battle against a fatal wound.
Okay, and then there's the third theory, the most dramatic one. Theory 3, the rogue wave theory.
Yeah, this one really focuses on Captain Cooper's three sisters account as the primary cause. It doesn't necessarily rule out the earlier damage from shoaling, but it says the rogue waves were the executioner.
The argument being that even if the ship wasn't fatally damaged by shoaling, or maybe only had minor damage from leaky hatches,
that the sheer overwhelming force of those 1, 2, 3 monster waves hitting a ship already low and stressed was enough to cause instantaneous catastrophic failure.
How would that work physically?
Well, imagine a 700-foot ship already riding low, hit it with successive 35-foot walls of water. The first wave could bury the bow, forcing it deep underwater.
Oh.
The second wave lifts the stern. The incredible stress on the middle of the ship, the keel and the deck plating, could just snap it, break its back instantly.
Like breaking a stick.
Exactly. And this theory aligns perfectly with the two most compelling pieces of evidence. The total lack of any distress call, and the way the ship was found broken cleanly in two on the bottom. It explains the speed and the silence.
So after all this time, is there a consensus? Do experts lean one way?
I think where many independent analysts land now is on a kind of fatal cascade theory. It's very plausible, even likely, that multiple things went wrong.
A combination.
Yeah, maybe an initial damage from shoaling did happen, causing that slow leak in the list. Maybe the hatches weren't perfectly sealed, or the damaged vents let in even more water, making the ship ride lower and lower, stressing the hull.
And then,
into that already dangerous situation, slams the three sisters. The rogue waves provide the final, overwhelming force that the already weakened and low-riding hull simply couldn't withstand. Snap.
So shoaling wounded it, leaks weakened it, and the rogue waves finished it off.
That sequence seems to fit all the available evidence best. Initial damage, progressive flooding, and then a sudden, catastrophic end delivered by the storm's worst weapon. It explains the timeline, the reports, the silence, and the wreckage.
The story didn't just stay within the maritime community, did it? It broke through into popular culture in a big way.
Absolutely. And you really have to credit one person for that, largely. Gordon Lightfoot, the Canadian singer-songwriter.
His song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, it came out just a year later in '76.
Yeah. He apparently read an article about the sinking, I think in Newsweek, and was just really moved by it. He wrote the ballad, and it became this huge hit.
It really captured the mood, didn't it? The mystery, the tragedy.
Perfectly. It etched the Fitzgerald and the names of those 29 men into public memory across North America and beyond. Made it more than just a statistic.
And there's an interesting story about Lightfoot and the lyrics, too. He actually changed them later on.
He did, yeah. Which shows a real respect for the story and the families. The original lyrics, written right after the Coast Guard and NTSB reports came out, kind of hinted at the hatch closure issue, maybe implying some crew fault, reflecting that official theory.
Which, as we said, the families and sailors strongly disagreed with.
Right. So years later, after talking more with people involved, Lightfoot actually started singing a revised lyric in his live shows. He changed the line about the hatches failing, shifting the focus more towards the overwhelming power of the storm and the lake itself.
Taking the blame off the crew.
Exactly. It was a small change, but it meant a lot to the families. A gesture of respect for the professionalism of the men who were lost. #B, the memorial bell and safety overhaul.
Beyond the song, there's a very physical reminder, a memorial artifact recovered from the wreck itself.
The ship's bell, yeah. In 1995, a diving expedition, with the family's permission, carefully recovered the Fitzgerald's original 200-pound bronze bell.
What did they leave in its place?
They put a replica bell back on the wreck, importantly, engraved with the names of all 29 crewmen. So the wreck site itself still has that memorial marker, honoring the men resting there.
And the original bell, where is it now?
It's the centerpiece of a really moving memorial exhibit at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum up at Whitefish Point, Michigan, near where the ship went down.
They have a ceremony every year, right, on the anniversary?
They do. Every November 10th, they hold a memorial service, and they solemnly ring that original bell 30 times.
30. Why 30?
29 times, once for each man lost on the Fitzgerald, and then a final 30th ring in memory of all the sailors who've lost their lives on the Great Lakes throughout history. It's incredibly powerful. Acknowledges the specific loss, but also the shared danger and sacrifice.
That's a beautiful tradition, but the Fitzgerald tragedy also led to concrete changes, didn't it, in terms of safety?
Oh, absolutely. It was a massive wake-up call. The loss of such a large modern ship forced a complete reevaluation of safety regulations on the Great Lakes. It proved no ship was immune to the Witch of November.
What kind of changes came out of it?
Quite a few significant ones. Mandatory survival suits for all crew members became standard. Those immersion suits that can keep you alive longer in cold water.
Better navigation tools.
Definitely. Requirements for more advanced depth finders and positioning systems, like Lorenzi back then, GPS now, to help avoid grounding and shoaling incidents.
And the hatches.
Much stricter rules about securing hatches and vents, especially on older vessels. More rigorous inspection schedules. Basically, a top-to-bottom tightening of safety protocols. Shipping on the lakes is safer today because of the lessons learned, tragically, from the Fitzgerald.
And the wreck site itself remains undisturbed.
Yes, it's a protected heritage site under Canadian law. Diving on the wreck is prohibited.
Yep.
It's considered a grave site. Those 29 men remain with their ship. As the old saying goes about Lake Superior, the lake seldom gives up her dead. So we've gone through the storm, the damage, the theories, this cascade of events that likely led to the Fitzgerald just vanishing. But we still come back to that final human element.
Those last words, "We are holding our own," spoken by Captain McSorley, a man facing seemingly impossible odds, blind, taking on water in a hurricane.
And it wasn't a denial of reality, was it? It sounds like a professional assessment. They were managing the crisis. They were pumping. They were navigating by radio relay. They were doing everything they could according to procedure. They were, in fact, holding their own.
Right up until the moment something utterly catastrophic and unsurvivable happened, the moment the system failed completely.
Exactly. McSorley was holding his own against the damage, against the storm, against the fear, right up until the lake delivered the final, instantaneous blow.
So the question we leave you with really is about that duty, that professionalism. What does it mean to maintain that composure, to follow your training, to hold your own, even when you might suspect or even know that the situation is ultimately beyond recovery?
How do you face that inevitability with such control, that capacity for human courage and duty, right up to the very last second? Maybe that's the final haunting mystery the Edmund Fitzgerald leaves us with, echoing across Lake Superior.
And so, another chapter closes. For more journeys into history's forgotten files, please like and subscribe. Your next story awaits.